and we're going to be going over a few tips and tricks that we've learned over the years to be doing some midterm prep and how to kind of get some organization, some studying skills, and a kind of a combination of both of those things. So this is also my coworker, Liz.
Hello, hello. All right, let's get started. Taking notes specifically for you. So taking notes to suit your learning style and your study needs is really important in university, both for like studying for retaining information, but also just to make sure you're organized in your own life. So your learning style and the needs of your coursework might change over time. So it's always good to kind of reevaluate your learning needs for each individual topic that you're taking, or at the beginning of a new semester. So if you would like, feel free to click on this link here, or if you can see it, you can type it out as well, or just search on your own. Take a look for a learning styles quiz and see if any of the results surprise you. Sometimes you can be a little bit, I don't know, you can assume that you're one kind of learner, like a visual learner, and find out, oh, you actually have a lot of auditory learning tendencies as well that might serve as useful for some kind of studying. But yeah, feel free to check that out, and we'll move on to some more of our tips and tricks. So, forms of studying.
Awesome. So one of the ones that I feel like are always like a lot of people's go-tos, especially when you have a lot of like definition, like heavy courses, so is memorization. So this is particularly useful method when it comes to like language courses or courses that you have to focus on a lot of definitions. So like anatomy is like one that I know like actually everyone with anatomy has a million flashcards all the time going on. So cue cards and Quizlet are the two main sources that I find the most helpful for memorization of things like that. Sorry. And so Quizlet is really cool. It's free, which is honestly awesome because we all love free. And you can make up like little quizzes for yourself, like match a definition to the card. They have a bunch of different ways for you to like go about matching definitions or typing them out, and like you can kind of arrange how you go over the content once you input it, like however you feel like you learn best, which is something that's I found really helpful. And then cue cards are also really helpful to a sense as well because as much as I love Quizlet, I feel like I personally learn better when I write things out. So I kind of do a mishmash of both. So with cue cards, I usually try and like color coordinate them into different sections as well, which we'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, those are two of the main resources that are awesome for memorization.
Awesome. All right. Another kind of useful organizational tool for kind of getting started with your studying is creating a mind map. So you can have it as organized or as disorganized as you like, as spontaneous and full of color, or as like uniform as you want. And it kind of just follows the natural connections your brain makes when you're organizing material in your own head. So you can follow your own train of thought to kind of create a map of how you associate the things that you've already learned about, and to integrate some more new things as well. Adding colors is a great way of differentiating which topic you're thinking about, either be it the big overarching topics or subtopics within what you're studying. And yeah, it's great because you can organize it however you'd like. Some people add images, some people don't. Some people use a lot more like bullet point type lists. Some people do a lot more free form. Whatever floats your boat.
Awesome. And then I think this is also the sorry.
Yes. Essay prep questions. So that's another. If you've got more essay type things you're studying for. So if you know you're upcoming test that's going to have a lot of long answer like essay form questions. Excuse my phone going off. Sorry, we'll just mute that. Um, and yeah, you can do some practice essay prep questions, which are a really great way of studying for those kinds of midterms. So make up some simple example questions on each topic that your exam is going to be covering. Fill out the bullet points for each one. Make it so like maybe a short key point summary of all the topics you want to cover in your essay question. And that means when you walk into your exam, when you've got to sit down and do that for realsies, you can just look at or like think of what you've already come up with in your head and make those connections. Like you don't have to make those connections anew in a stressful environment. You're making them right now, like ahead of time, so that when you walk into that exam, you can just go, oh, I've covered this kind of topic before, but these are the points I want to make, and it makes it a little bit less stressful and makes it a little bit easier to remember. I find as well.
Awesome. And then another really cool thing, like I mentioned earlier, is to have color association when you're doing some of your like cue cards or your notes, or like you're kind of organizing anything in general, to help with your memory. This is something that I think I've used throughout my university career, and it has been so helpful. So using color to direct attention. So it always says like warm colors achieve this goal the best. Red like really directs attention. I know in my calendars I have all my due dates set to red, so I really like know what's up. And to use like strong colors, so they should be bold and but not like really bright. Like yellows sometimes work, but like really that's one I kind of avoid because it's hard to read. So you want it to be like really easy to read, so you don't have to like strain for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then improve readability with color. So contrasting chromatic colors in the text background. So like I know I put like headings for a lot of subjects, and when I take my notes and I have one color associated to like each class kind of thing. And I'll like write my headings in a color, and then I'll like write my notes in like black or gray or whatever, like or usually blue, but just so there's like that differential. And then yeah, finding colors that are based on their meaning. So like appropriate tones according to the like whatever your audience is. So like I know for like my enviro course, I would use green and like all those little things just like help like figure it out a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. Awesome. All right. And taking lecture notes in preparation for midterms. So it's always hard, especially you get about halfway through the semester, and it's very hard to maintain some of the study habits you might have had when things were a little bit calmer. Especially when it comes to online note taking for lectures, it can be easy just to kind of listen to the online video, or if you've got an in-person Zoom thing, it can be hard to pay attention for the whole duration, and have good notes at the end. So these are just some little bit like some examples of some note-taking ideas that might help for keeping on top of your notes in an online environment. So the one good like a good tip that we often say is use a note-taking template. There's a million available on the internet. There are a bunch available through our resources as well, with just some basic outlined information, the lecture topic, the professor if that's important, like to note-taking, course code and date again if it's important to your note-taking, and then just keep separate some key terms that you learned through the lecture, an outline of the lecture topics that you cover, your main notes, like your generalized notes about the lecture, and your key questions or comments that either you thought about asking in class and got answers to from the professor, or just questions that you had while you were going over the material that the professor answered in class or lecture or the readings or some such. And then just a summary of the kind of the main points of the lecture overall. So that's one way of organizing it. Obviously, the example on the screen here is kind of condensed. You can have as much room in there as you want for as many points as you want, but that's just one example. Another example is to have like a kind of an expand on your points kind of format. So this is the second example here, where you've got your three main points in three different colors, and then your expansions on each in a different like paragraph with highlighted subheadings. So I find this is really good when you've got a professor who will put up a slide and it's got maybe like two or three bullet points on it, and he takes that bullet point and then maybe talks for like, I'm thinking of a specific professor here, maybe you can tell, he'll take a bullet point, he'll talk for like 5 or 10 minutes about all the things related to that one short bullet point, and then talk about the next bullet point for maybe short like 5 or 10 minutes, and it's all related to the one thing that was on the slide, but it's all very more loosely related rather than slide for each main point. So I find this format can be nice when you're trying to collect a bunch of information in one place that maybe is a little bit more freeform. And then lastly, lots of diagrams and memory aids. So I find it can be hard taking a lecture from like all the facts and the details and making it something I can actually remember. So I find if you can in class, make up a couple of diagrams for what you're learning. I always bring pencils and erasers and draw little diagrams in class to help me remember things, because I find that's just a better way for me to learn. And then when you go to study later on, you already have those memory aids worked into your lecture notes. So if you want to make mnemonic for remembering maybe an acronym of something important, or maybe a list of key terms using some kind of acronym. That can be really helpful, stuff like that. And if you work it into your notes the first time you're making them, then you don't have to figure out a whole bunch of new memory aids or diagrams when you're taking like expanding on your notes for your midterm studying.
Totally. And then taking notes. So this is like a condensed version of another post that we've made earlier. So if you want to go in depth about any of these, we also have a video up on our YouTube about taking notes on readings. So this is just like the little main points of them. So mainly it's one of them is SQ4R, which is a really awesome reading strategy. There's lots of videos regarding like how to do it online, but with this you go through survey, question, read, respond, review, and record. So before you go and do your reading, you will like look through the book and like kind of see like what the key points are, any like visual aids, kind of like look and see everything that's going on. Write out a few questions that you want to have answered by the time you're reading and done reading the text. And then you're going to go through and then read the text and respond to those questions. And then you're going to review your responses, and then you're going to record your notes afterwards as well. So it takes a bit longer to do it this way, but I find that this way does prepare you a lot for like studying for midterms later, because then you have all of that information already written out, which is really cool. Another really fun one is gummy bear bribery. So this is one that I use a lot as well. It's if I don't feel like particularly motivated for doing my readings one day, I'll like get a bag of my favorite candies, whatever it is that week, and place it like later on down the page. So it's like once I get down to the part I'm reading towards, I get the gummy bear as like a reward. So it's like an incentive based reading strategy. So that's one that's really fun. I really like it. And then later is 5 minute sections. This is one that I actually learned from Liz. So you go in and you're just going to say, like, okay, I'm going to do 5 minutes of this. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of, like, oh, I have to do all of these things. It's like, I'm going to sit down. Like, I can even set a timer for 5 minutes and, like, just see what you can get done in that time. Like, that might even be, like, just reading the introduction or just reading the abstract and the conclusion, like, whatever 5 minutes consists of. But that solid 5 minute chunk and just to work in smaller chunks like that are really helpful ways when you're struggling with motivation. Also, another one is 20 questions. So you go into reading your text and you prepare a list of questions that might be of interest to you. So you might even be curious of like, oh, like I wonder why the author has like chosen the subject or something like that. Like they don't always have to be pertaining to exactly what the text is about. It's more like what your personal interests, as well as like questions surrounding the text as well. So like kind of a mix of both, just so you can help find like a connection to the text and try and build on that from there while you're reading it. And then main points. So then going into main points, you will.
I think we kind of covered main points a little bit in the lecture note taking because it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like those three different sections, that kind of thing. And chunking and highlighting we've already covered as well.
Yeah. All right, great. Okay, now we're just going to do like a structural review of the different kinds of midterms you might be having and just some tips about those.
Awesome. So for take-home exams, these ones are, of course, they vary between different subjects, but with review with them, it's good to look over them as a whole and kind of review the questions, depending on the length of time you have in order to like submit it. After you receive the exam, you can go over a time management strategy once you look over the questions and kind of break it down to see how you think you can approach it so you can have it done by the due date. Reviewing your notes and lectures, organizing ideas and thinking. Just make sure you review everything you can beforehand as well, so like you have that content fresh in your brain, and then make sure you submit it on time.
Yeah, brilliant. And one piece of advice that I always pass on to students is that some professors, they like to be sneaky with their take-home exams. I don't know how often you found this, Ashley, but I find professors they'll ask very specific questions, and it might look correct at first, but always give your take-home exams an extra once over, because there might be an occasional like, trick question here or there. But for the most part, they're not so bad. Okay. I can't recall. Was I reading multiple choice or were you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, sorry. All right, multiple choice. So, the first thing you want to do when you're studying for multiple choice midterm is obviously you want to make sure you've got your lecture notes and reading notes and all that. But the first thing you probably want to do is take a look at your textbook and see if there are any sample questions in your textbook, because those are a fantastic way of studying. And often they'll have an answer key in the textbook with them. And so you may even be able to quiz yourself. Or if you know another person in that class and you're able to do it over Zoom, quiz each other on the answers that you might have. Often what you'll find is that there'll either be chapter-based questions in the back of the book, or at the end of each chapter there'll be a like a question and answer kind of type summary. So those are some really great resources. Another fantastic way of studying for multiple choice midterms are using Quizlet or using cue cards. Again, that's about making your own questions like you would for like a essay type questions, for example. But rather than like making your own long form questions, you're making your own true or false or short answer, or not short answer, like true or false or multiple choice questions. So you can try and connect some new ideas too. You can make a little bit more complex multiple choice for yourself to help you think about multiple ideas at once, or you can just do, oh, like what is the definition of this term and stuff like that. So you can really feel it out and make it your own way. I definitely study definitions and key terms. That's often something that you'll find on a lot of multiple choice type midterms. It'll often be key terms, especially in first and second year. And make sure you do though focus on the big picture, not just the details, because sometimes it will be a bit more high concept multiple choice where you're working in a bunch of different ideas you may have studied, and that's where making your own can be really useful, because you can take a bunch of the different things you've studied and say, like, what is the answer if this is true and this is true and this is true and this is true, and kind of make those connections yourself. And yeah, definitely study related topics that might be like similar on a group together, because you will often have those questions that ask you to bring in concepts from a couple different ideas you've studied in class. But yeah, all in all, definitely use those resources. Cue cards and Quizlet are really good for studying for that. And yeah, good luck.
Awesome. And then for essay-based questions, those are kind of similar to a note-taking method that Liz was talking about earlier. But so it's really good ways to prepare for these are to look for sample questions in your textbook at the end of chapters. And to make up some of your own questions that you think it can be, depending on like if the prof usually, if it's essay based, the prof usually gives some hints as to like where you want to like study, like focus your studies on. But regardless, you should study the key components of the text and try and make sure you have a clear and concise argument, and try and make it like as condensed as you can, because with depending on like the page length and everything, but with like essay based questions, usually it's like maybe like 1 or 2 pages versus like writing like a like huge whole essay kind of thing. So this is more just to be comfortable in creating an argument, and to make sure that you're budgeting time when doing this, especially when it's like kind of a mixed exam where you're doing some multiple choice, some essay questions, some short answer, and like all of the above kind of thing. You want to make sure that you leave enough time for your essay-based questions, but you don't have all of your time on them and then you're not able to get to the rest of your exam. So it is kind of a balance to make sure that you're affording time to each section. And to make sure that you use specifics when you're doing your essay-based questions, and as well as making sure you have clear and legible writing. I know when I go into exams, my writing somehow just turns into chicken scratch, especially when I'm trying to catch up at the end. But that is one thing that definitely helps the markers as well.
Awesome. and short answer. So yeah, definitely for short answer, it's usually going to be key concepts and bigger picture type answers. So you might have some specific short answers, but oftentimes they are looking for like kind of a bigger picture answer. Make sure to focus on writing keywords when you're answering short answer questions. Identify the points of the questions. Do you need to explain the topic? Identify something or argue a point in this question. Make sure you know exactly what the short answer question is asking for before you start writing. Um, and a good rule of thumb is aim to have as many points in your answer as it is mark value. So, for example, if your short answer is worth 5 points, you might want to have five um, main topics to your answer, five main points to your answer, just to make sure that you're covering all of your bases. And don't overcomplicate it. Short answer questions are supposed to be short. They're usually supposed to be between like 100 and 500 words long, depending on the professor. That is something you can ask. Yeah, you should definitely be aiming to write less than 500 words, especially in an online midterm. Like I know you can type a little bit faster than you can write sometimes, but if you're in class writing a short answer question, it shouldn't be a huge page. It should be like half a page or less. Um, I mean, again, check with the professor. They will answer those. If they're expecting longer short answers or short answers, they'll let you know. But yeah, that's definitely it is supposed to be short, not super long. So don't worry if you don't have a million and two things to say. Just a good few points, as many as the mark within the question is usually just fine.
Awesome. And then these are just like a very short point here, but when you're studying, depending on your learning type, I know I've heard really cool things where like I like chewed a specific flavor of gum while I've been studying, and then while I've been taking my exam, just to like have that like association there. It's really cool. I find it really helpful, as well as like listening to like some classical music or something while you're studying, and then depending on your where you're studying or where you're taking the exam, you sometimes are able to listen to music while you're taking an exam. So it's cool to listen to the music at the same time
Mm-hmm.
as you're writing it as well, especially with like take home essays and stuff like that.
Yeah, and definitely those associations can help you keep things in your mind that maybe you would have forgotten otherwise.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that is it for us. Thank you very much for listening to our webinar. Do we have any points we wanted to brush over in the Q&A, Ashley, or are we good?
No, I think we're good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, and I hope this was useful. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Rebound or, yeah, sounds good. All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.